After 3 years of recording different stuff, I've had some bitter experiences and messed up quite a few recordings, so I made a habit of running through a quick checklist before pressing record, and I suggest you do the same. It'll save you a lot of headaches and frustration. The list applies pretty much to any recording environment, even though it was specifically done with the Rodecaster Pro 2, so if some points are not applicable to your equipment, just skip those. First, make sure you have an SD card in the device, or USB drive. The Rodecaster Pro 2 indicates it with the record button's color. If it's green, you're good to go. However, if the button is blue, then either stick an SD card or USB drive in, that's easier, or fire up your computer, connect it to the RCP2 on the USB 1 port, not on the USB 2, that is not meant for recording, and launch an audio recording software to set up the tracks to record all your channels. When doing so, check the manufacturer's page on how the USB channels are set up. Usually channels 1 and 2 are the left and right sides of the main stereo mix, and the individual channels follow after that. Mic channels are usually mono, everything else is usually stereo, so pay attention to that. As for the stereo channels, you either need to set up 2 tracks for the left and right channel respectively, or set that track to stereo. Or just put the SD card in, as I said, it's much easier. Second are the analog inputs and the outputs. Make sure every microphone and headphone is plugged in, and you know which one belongs to whom. The easiest way to make sure is to use color coding rings or colored XLR cable. Then assign your faders to input channels so that you can physically control all channels, and while you are there, color code them too. Set up every microphone properly, add phantom power to condenser mics if needed, set up mics using their polar pattern to your advantage, so turn them in a way that most likely avoids someone's mic picking up somebody else's talking. It is more or less unavoidable to a certain extent, but the more you minimize it, the easier job you'll have in post-production. Then set everyone's mic gain at the proper level, do a mic check with everyone, as even if you would have the same mic for all, everyone's voice is slightly different. Then check if your mics are not muted and not soloed. Make sure that the headphone volumes are not at 0, plus, when you are there already, color code them too. And finally, set the monitor outputs to be muted if mic faders are up, otherwise the microphones will pick up the sound coming out from the monitors, and you'll be hearing a sound feedback beep in no time. Once the analog setup is taken care of, let's look at the digital part, starting with multitrack recording, which is recommended unless you are streaming. So go to Menu, Output, Multitrack. Here the recording tab sets up what's happening on the SD card or USB drive you've plugged in step 1. I like to set the recording tab to post fader, as it is then recording the show as I hear it when recording, including all effects. Pre-fader, on the other hand, will ignore the fader position, so every channel will be recorded at unity level, and you can tweak it to your liking in post. At this point, you can also decide whether or not you want to bake in whatever effects and processing you have applied to the recording. Note that the effects and processing will be recorded to the stereo mix file, but if you choose to bypass processing, then the individual multitrack files will not have them applied. You have the same options on the USB tab, which decides what's happening to the sound that's going out to your computer over the USB 1 channel. If you're recording in a DAW, it's worth setting them up to multitrack, either pre or post fader as per your preference, although I normally would set it up the opposite of what I have set for the SD card. So if I record post fader to the SD card, I would make a redundancy recording to the DAW pre-fader, bypassing all the effects. If you are streaming, however, set the USB tab to off, as then it will not send out multitrack but the main stereo mix, which is what most streaming software can pick up. Fourth, routing and submixes. This can be a sneaky party pooper. First, make sure that your headphone output includes all channels, and those of the guests include whatever they want. Then sanity check if you didn't accidentally make a custom routing for the SD card output. It happened to me once when I have played around with the submixes feature and excluded mic channel 1 from the recording output, then started recording, only to realize after 30 minutes that my microphone was not recorded at all. So make sure that the recording output includes all channels. Similarly, make sure that USB 1 that either goes into your DAW for recording or into your streaming software also includes all channels necessary. If you have remote callers on the show, see if their channels are set to mix minus. Those channels could be the Bluetooth, the USB 1 chat, and the USB 2. Remember, you are using USB 1 for recording or streaming, so check that all other channels are on mix minus if you are using them for remote guests. If you are using USB 2 to route a second computer sound into a recording, then that should carry the main mix instead. And finally, the recording environment. A couple of things to pay attention to there are that any external noise is reduced as much as possible. Switch off everything that you can that makes a sound that you don't intend to record. Things like air conditioner, a fan of a computer that you are not using for the recording, a dishwasher, a tumble dryer, which is especially loud, a washing machine. Also, close your door and windows if you can. Try to sound treat your room with blankets, pillows, clothes, anything that is not a wildly reflective hard surface. Don't go crazy about it though, you will not have to build a studio. Just be aware that those things help. But what helps the most if you get closer to the microphone, as then you will be by far the loudest sound source it picks up, and your voice will be less melted with the noise and reflections of the environment. And also physically, your head then blocks those sound waves trying to sneak into the mic capsule. If you have a big head, that's an advantage for a change. Mute your iPhone and/or switch off notifications, and finally, indicate that you are recording and you are therefore not to be disturbed. It doesn't always help, but at least you have a moral advantage when being mad about someone interrupting your recording. And that's pretty much it. Check your recording medium, SD card or USB drive. Check the analog inputs and outputs, so mics and headphones. Check your multi-track settings, your routing and submixes. And finally, look around in your environment. It sounds like a lot, but with practice, it becomes a routine check, and these 3 to 4 minutes may save you hours of work and frustration. With that, thanks for watching, and bye for now.